Sneaker waves
Big
drinking.
storm. Moondog posted a video that somebody recorded some lady was walking with her back to it.
Can we start?
All right, yeah,
Down in the building.
all right.
Yeah.
I told them I'm leaving. They tried to tell me no.
Toledo City Council special meeting for November 15th, 2024. The Toledo City Council will hold the meeting for city council and staff in person as well through the Zoom video meeting platform. The public is encouraged to attend the meeting electronically. Take a roll call. Councilor Burns,
Here.
Councilor Kaufman,
Here.
Councilor Mix,
Tracy. Oh, here.
Councilor Sylvia,
Yeah, I am here.
Councilor Strong,
Present.
Council President Bush,
Here.
and I am here. All right. Camera, CIS training.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Hello, Amanda. I'm sorry we didn't get to meet in person. I guess I should be looking this way. Hello.
Yeah,
Hopefully, we get to do that one of these days.
yeah, hopefully soon.
Yes. So does everybody know what CIS is?
No.
No.
That's what I
I
thought.
was gonna
No,
say,
no.
could you explain it anyway?
Yes, absolutely. So CIS is a risk pool, and it's a risk pool that was founded by the League of Oregon Cities and the AOC, the Association of Oregon Counties. Back in the 80s, when there was an insurance crisis and cities and counties couldn't afford to pay their insurance premium. So my organization was created to cover the liabilities and the risks of cities like the city of Toledo. And today, we provide coverage for the city of Toledo and a lot of different things, workers' comp, general liability, auto, property. It's a very long list. And so I am the deputy general counsel of this organization, and I oversee the work primarily of our employment lawyers and our HR professionals. I do a lot of municipal law stuff. I do kind of quite a bit of different little things. So anyway, that's who I am. That's what my organization is. And I'm here today to just talk about kind of how to be a better council. That's really kind of about it. We are going to be talking about a couple of different things. We got it. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about just kind of some things that we've seen about how to be a really effective, high-functioning city council, how to work better amongst all of yourselves. We're going to talk about some legal issues, like, what does it mean under the charter to have certain duties? And what does it mean under the Oregon Tort Claims Act to be indemnified? If, like, for example, you got sued, would the city defend you? Would CIS cover you? There's a statute that governs that. There's a general liability policy that governs that. We're going to talk about all that today. We're going to talk a little bit about social media because elected officials unfortunately get stuck with social media issues quite a bit around the state of Oregon. And so just some reminders about how to do that effectively and not get into trouble, I think is really important to remind everybody of. And then at the end, we get to play one of my favorite games. Mike gets to join me on this one, but I love this game called Stump the Lawyer. So at the end of this presentation, if you want to ask me something or ask Mike something that you haven't in the past, or you were almost like, gee, I was wondering about that issue, now's the time to do it. Now, having.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Full issue?
No, what would you want to ask a lawyer? Yeah. Now, but here's the caveat on that. Even though there's nobody else present for this meeting, this is not a confidential meeting. This is not covered under executive session. That means anything you say here today is recorded. So if there's something you want to talk specifically about with respect to the city or with respect to how the city is handling a particular issue, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to Mike or me so we can have an attorney-client privilege communication. Because as a member of this elected body, my organization is the city, and you as all the leaders of that city fall under that privilege. So that is my caveat to you.
So we can reach out to you personally if.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So if he tells us to go to hell, we can just reach out to you.
Mike?
I don't think that's happening. No.
Mike is the city's legal authority, right? When it comes to issues involving the interpretation of the charter, little I don't know what you want to call it, issues that might be so specific to Toledo that it's not really something that I would have personal knowledge about. That I can't help you.
Right,
with.
I'm just talking,
Yeah.
to giving them.
Yeah. But he will tell you if you need to call him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so if you,
And because they're our insurance carrier, when I do a disciplinary letter for city manager or termination letter, I'm usually sending them to her and saying, hey, would you take a look at this and edit it and provide feedback? And that way we keep them informed when the city manager's taking personnel actions. Which has consistently been that.
I think you need to explain the insurance provider, because the insurance you're talking about is liability insurance, not just benefit packages.
Yes.
And I don't know that everybody realizes the umbrella and
So
the scope of
Yeah, I was
what
gonna
they
say, the scope
cover,
of what CIS.
so when you say insurance, I automatically went to benefit package,
Yeah.
and that's not what you're talking about.
I think the vehicle
benefits of an
Right?
employee. We're talking about the liability
Yeah.
of the city
I understand.
with,
It took me a while to figure that out
yeah. Yeah.
when I first
You wreck
started.
your car and it gets totaled and then just put liability on it.
So that's the.
No, I carry full coverage on my total car, thank you.
All right, that's, okay.
Let's keep moving. All right.
And usually it's me, they just put their head down, oh God, I'm taking a break today and letting everybody else carry it for me.
I figured you used it all up for last meeting.
Okay, so 8 habits of highly effective councils. This is what we see with councils that work really well together. First of all, what does it mean to be a member of a team? Remember that though each one of you is individually a leader within the city of Toledo because you were elected to this position. The way a city council is set up, no one of you as an individual has any power. You must operate as a team in order to
Yes.
use the authority that's been given to you to help the citizens and help the residents and make life better for everybody here. So that means we have to operate as a team. And so this slide just shows you some of the common characteristics of a team. And, you can read them yourselves, but really what we're talking about is a team that is different than a group. Because a group tends to work as individuals on individual projects without really considering what everybody else is working on. And the best councils work interdependently. They work together. They try to come to consensus on issues. They try to figure out kind of the strengths and weaknesses of every position and come up with something that might work with better. Shared ownership of tasks, shared responsibility, taking responsibility and promoting what's going on as a group, the consensus, as opposed to just a personal agenda, that type of thing. But it involves, also active listening and a space where people can feel free to express their ideas and opinions about how things are being handled at the city so that nobody feels like they can't speak their mind in a meeting. It's an open forum, truly, as that concept is revealed. So that's what we encourage. Now, in terms of habits, thinking and acting strategically, do we have a strategic plan at the city of Toledo?
Yes.
Of course we do, right? And a lot of those
Don't
tasks.
say of course.
Oh.
We didn't use that.
Okay, but you got one now, so that's what matters. So that we move forward, Rod, right? We don't keep looking back, we move forward. So the strategic plan, super important, right? Because as this elected body, you are thinking strategically. You are not necessarily thinking about the minutia of how to get those strategies enacted, because that's why you have staff, that's why you have experts. And that's one of the nice things about being an elected official. You come up with the big ideas and then you have the staff to implement them. You let it go, right? That is what staff is here for. And so that's why habit number 1, thinking and acting strategically, looking at the big picture, not the individual items, is a better way to function. And it's a good use of your authority. And in fact, as Mike will talk about later, that's a proper use of your authority. So that's why we like to talk about that.
On these strategic plans, are you talking about stuff that we do kind of at the first of the year and do that and
So
then
like,
post them? Is that's the strategic plan?
Yes.
so like, I'll digress just for a second. Modern military theory, breaks things into strategic, operational, and
Okay,
tactical.
I found this on the web for break things.
Strategic, yeah. Your phone is listening to you, Mike.
Yeah, so there's a distinction between strategy and tactics, right? The strategy is the big picture, what's the ultimate goal? And the tactics are the how. How are you gonna do it? So as a council, your focus is strategy. You know, how are you gonna take the hill? And then you let the subordinate commanders and, using a military analogy, or, we want to make that bank building into a police department. And then you let the city manager and the department heads come up with subordinate tasks that make that happen, but
Habit number 2, understanding and demonstrating teamwork. This is again, sort of what we've touched on already, just having those interpersonal skills and the ability to work with others and having the knowledge to do a job, having the ability to deal with issues, leaving emotion out of it, acting rationally, right? Sometimes I've seen on councils that when somebody's opinion or idea is put forward and others attack it or they criticize it, person puts forward the ideas like, why are you being so mean to me? And they get really defensive. And that's not what you're here for. It's not a bunch of personal emotions. It's like coming forward with ideas about how do we move forward? What's best for the city? That type of thing. So not only do you remove emotion when you propose something, you remove emotion when somebody gives you feedback that you don't like. That's the best way to act rationally, because this is supposed to be a decision-making, deliberating body. That's what you do. The group supports the collective goal, right? That's how you demonstrate teamwork. You understand that maybe this isn't the first choice, but if the consensus agrees with it, it's important to support the goal. You can express dissent. But you support the goal that's going forward, because that's what the individual body is doing, not individual actors.
I know sometimes when we're trying to get tasks and such,
Yeah.
talking about, and I think I've seen that only a few of us talk about an issue. And I really would like to hear everybody's opinion.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we don't hear that.
That's important. So for whatever reason, the environment needs to be like made accessible to them so that there is no fear of retribution or, concern over criticism or whatever. But it should be an environment where everybody feels comfortable speaking, expressing their opinion. That's important for teamwork.
Question I have about that. Because I don't know very much. And that if I want to know more, I can only discuss it in the confines of the meeting. Like I couldn't go to city council members that could give me more information. Like, what is that about? What?
You can, you just can't have a meeting of 3.
And
So if you came to me for
like,
breakdown, but
Sorry, you can't go to Tracy and then go to me.
and tell us
No,
what
no.
the other person said.
Thing, because then it becomes a serial meeting. Because you've all.
You can talk to Tracy and him. You can do two.
to make a
You cannot make
decision,
a third.
I mean, you can
You can gather information all you want.
You can have a council meeting and afterwards you can talk to Tracy and say, hey,
Okay.
what did you think about that?
Okay.
I think maybe in the future we need.
That's what we used to do at the work
presentations,
session.
Follow up on that in the future.
Okay.
Sorry.
That
And
helped.
get her confirmation and she could.
Never gonna learn.
But what would be
That's what the
okay,
work sessions used to
what
be.
would not be okay is, okay, after a meeting, say, you and I didn't like how things went. Didn't like how the vote went, but hey, let's talk about how we're gonna get this person and that person on board and that would be.
Oh, no.
Okay,
yeah.
see, that
I
would
get
be
that.
a serial meeting, so that's why there's no serial meetings, but you can talk about certain things that wouldn't raise an issue. I mean, there's certain ways you can do it and other, as long as we're not holding all of our discussions away from the dais, and as long as we're not
Okay.
holding,
But
making decisions.
I could meet with you and you could give me a little history, because you've been here.
or you could talk to. That's what
Anytime
I
I
do.
didn't know I could do. Anytime. Oh,
Yeah.
yay.
You can go up and
Anytime.
talk to Amanda, I think.
And staff is not included in.
Right.
Yes, going to staff is always the best choice,
Yes.
because
That is
you can't get in trouble for that.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
And that's usually what I default to, just to be on the safe side.
thank you.
Yeah.
That helped. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
But you can't, but you know, there was an issue with the Public Works. You can't go down to the individual person and say, why are you digging a hole here? You
No.
can go to Amanda and you can go down and look at it. I don't know.
I find it. I've stopped by a work site and said, what's going on?
Yeah, but you're not telling them, don't do that.
You're doing it more as a citizen and being
Yeah.
interested, not a
Yes.
city councilor to say, you know,
Okay.
throw your weight around or whatever.
I find it hard to leave the emotions out of it if you're passionate about something.
Sure.
Like the thing I was just talking to you about earlier, when I brought it up at council about these buses getting passed by cars. My emotions were deep in that because I'm extremely passionate. So I guess it's one of those things like, how do you define leaving the emotions out of it or allowing the emotions in? Council, I mean, if you're passionate about something, how are you gonna leave the emotion out?
Right, express the passion. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that if somebody came back and said, well, I just don't see this safety risk, and your response was, well, F you, that would be wrong.
That would be my.
You listening to this meeting?
Have you met Frank before?
Well, at that point, does our liability insurance cover?
Well, I mean, this is one of those issues that, discourse in a meeting, disagreement in a meeting, insults in a meeting, A, wouldn't give rise to a claim, and B, even if it's not something that we would be like, oh my God, we have to look out for a liability reason, we look out for it just in terms of this city being able to operate in a healthy way. And so that's what our interest is, to be honest, so.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, we've had some pretty explosive issues. And all of a sudden, if you get out in the public or something and somebody's yammering at you and you do go off on them, we would still be covered.
Yes.
Now,
But you have to
Hold yourself.
try really hard to behave.
Yeah, I have to try to be.
You, as long as, we're gonna talk about this, but you have to be acting within the course and scope of your duties. So you are responding as a member of the city council. If it comes to some point, however, where you get so angry that you punch somebody in the face, that would not be covered. That is not within the course and scope of your duties. Having a dialogue with a member of
What
the
if-
public is.
but if Officer Pace or Chief Pace didn't see it, then.
I have no comment.
Leave the oar in the boat.
Leave the oar in
So you got criminal and civil.
I'm just
Intentional
thinking,
tort.
Yeah,
Outside the
right
box.
now, the St. Helens has a huge issue and there's just people
Yes.
Oh,
yammering
God.
all
Yes.
over. That's terrible. We have had kind of that same
I'll
thing
tell you after
happen
the meeting.
here.
I'll tell you after
Not
the meeting.
that particular issue, but a different issue. And people were yelling and screaming and it was awful.
and unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of that around the state of Oregon, where
Must
elected
be.
officials are the kind of the bearing brunt of community frustration, of people just not being civil. It's a real problem throughout the state right now, unfortunately. And all I can say to you is the law doesn't view you as any different than an average person. And so you have no special rights. And in fact, the law expects you to put up with criticism and anger and hatred.
That's
in
part of
some
our
cases.
job.
It's part of your job now, unfortunately.
It always has been.
Well,
It,
It's just gotten more,
maybe that's it.
but well, it's,
It has.
It's
the
more
temperature's
public.
gone up, but the issue is more of
cameras in prison.
numbers.
Okay.
So back, when I started back in 99, there would be a hot button issue, but there'd be like 3 people in the room.
Yeah.
Now, when there's a hot button issue, like
20.
years ago, the room's full. It's a different scale of people being upset. You know, it's,
We haven't had none since I've been on council.
no, and be thankful.
Yeah.
But yeah, back in the early 2000s, you know, there'd be some hot button issue, and we have 2 or 3 people come in and give us the holy what fors, and you know, you could get through that. And then 6 years ago, let's just say that there was a lot of division in town, and the place would be full with both sides. And
Yeah, and the bickering between the
Yeah,
sides was.
and the bickering between the sides would then overflow
Can we
onto the
put in
council, and then,
dividers?
yeah, it was a mess.
It was bad.
It was, but that was because there was people in the audience that were mad at council. The issues that I see coming up that we've got, when that gets out, people are gonna come and wanna know what the hell we're doing about the issues.
I have a feeling things are gonna explode on us very soon,
Yep.
and I'm very concerned about
To the attorney.
how we are going to handle it as counselors, as a city.
Story strips off.
I've already got people.
They're
private
making
message
my
me
skin
screaming
raw.
at me, and I have to say no comment.
This is the only bad one.
That's it. But then social media just spreads rumors and stuff related to
Yeah.
hardly depend.
Yes.
And that's the problem. So those chairs will be filled one day.
There was a, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm terrible about that.
You are.
I am. I'm terrible about that, and I'm working on it. I promise you guys, I'm aware of it and I'm working on it. You guys need to say, shut up, Tracy, it's not your turn.
I'm not getting in an argument with you, Tracy.
And it's probably wise, Rod. Anyhow, my son came home yesterday from playing cards at his friend's house, and his friends were grilling him on supposedly a good portion, now this is all supposed, we know this is not true, but the rumor that's going around now, and it's being spread by one of the businesses at the end of the street, is that half the city council is on paid administrative leave. We were being investigated for stealing money from the city.
That's awesome.
And the police chief is in on it.
Paid.
I will, who's getting my paycheck?
I would like to know who's getting my paycheck too. Yeah.
And he says, you know what? My mom comes home in tears sometimes, but I'm pretty sure she's not making any money on it. And he's like, he says, no, none of that's true. And they're like, well, what is? And he's like, my mom can't talk about it, so obviously I can't talk about it. I have no idea. And they're like, what do you mean she's your mom? He's like, no, my mom is not gonna talk about stuff she's not supposed to talk
Right.
about.
Yep.
And he's, you know, but it's like, these are the rumors that come swirling around. So it doesn't just hit us, it hits our families too.
Oh, yeah.
So just so y'all know,
Social media is even.
It's the worst.
People on the couch. Now you knock on their door and say, what the hell are you talking?
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore.
We had,
knock on the door.
I post lost
You
animals.
find out who's lambasting you and you knock on their door.
We had
I
a
get
city
excited.
administrator in Eastern Oregon who was the subject of some pretty vile threats. And so it got so bad that she got law enforcement involved. And at the end of the day, they determined the person wasn't even from Eastern Oregon. They were from Corvallis or something like that. And it's like, that's why social media is such a horrible venue, right? You never know where they're coming from. You don't even know if they're residents, right?
There's a
Some
lot
of
of
them
people that
just
comment
stir
on the.
stuff up like a video game, like it's their entertainment. I mean,
That's
it's,
right.
yeah, it's.
Citizens.
They're past residents who have moved
Yeah.
on, but they're still complaining about the
Oh,
issues
yeah,
within the
just to
city.
Stir.
That's the biggest hot
This-
button I see in the community is people that don't even live here anymore.
This isn't new.
No,
This has
But
been
they-
around since, as long as the internet's been around.
It's been around longer. The internet's just
The
facilitated.
internet's have given people the keyboard warrior mentality that I can say anything I want behind this keyboard, and there's 2,000 miles between us, so there's nothing you can do about it.
All right, well, on that happy note,
moving on.
let's keep talking about habits.
There you go.
There we go. Oops, okay, and I'm turning this over now to Mike.
Hey.
What does it mean to have a council manager form of government?
You know, this is the most, this is the most used form of government in the United States. You, you know, it's used in a bunch of other countries too, but, you really have a, mayor, council president, city council that are there at the strategic level, that are setting policies, that are kind of making the big decision. These are the big goals that we want to accomplish as a city. And then you have the city manager and the city attorney and the municipal court judge that work for the council. And everybody else works for the city manager. And so in an ideal situation, what you should have is you set the big picture goals as the council, and then the city manager is, down there at the, down below the strategic level, tactics, how do I accomplish the goals of the council? And then she's got her department heads that are kind of the experts, public works, police, fire, to kind of execute those actions.
So it's an upside, it's a tree, then. It's a tree.
Yeah.
What you're describing.
Yeah, it should be a tree that comes down and flows and kind of reassesses, as you guys reassess the strategic goal, they can adjust the tasks. How do we do it? Because otherwise, for example, if we're we're talking about redoing the parking all down Main Street. And if we don't have that strategic goal, this is what we want it to look like in the future, then, maybe Public Works is painting a portion of it or repaving a portion of it. When really, the strategic goal would be to make it a one-way street. And so some of those tasks and actions, the how, don't really fit within the picture of the strategy that the council's coming up with. So this next slide. Oh. Okay. City council, generally, we talk about policymakers, visionaries, they're the legislative body. Obviously, you're gonna approve the ordinances and, limited hiring authority, the charter and the, primarily the charter, puts all of the hiring and firing on the city manager. The exception we dealt with recently with the pro tem, you have pro tem city manager has all the authority of a city manager under the charter, except has to hire and fire with the consent of the council. And then I think our new charter that just passed really lays out the administrative, quasi-judicial, legislative functions separately in different sections and more clearly. So,
Question, real quick, before you get any further, in that new charter, because I don't remember for the old, did we change the wording for the interim city manager to give them that power to be able to hire and fire without council? I don't know if we changed that or not.
no, it's still there.
It's still there.
And
Is that Oregon law or is that just our
I
decision?
think that's just our charter.
is there,
It's been in the charter.
so I know you say the charter's passed, but I found out yesterday because my son's ballot got returned. There's over 300 ballots that, and I don't know where all they're from, that they rejected for their signatures. And he asked, well, what about the issues that might, and they said, well, some of those issues aren't decided yet then until those ballots are, they have a certain amount of time. So things like our county, commissioner, that's not actually decided yet.
Not until after
Our city
Thanksgiving.
charter might not actually be decided yet.
Yeah.
So it may not, what, Rod?
I was just gonna say, that's why it's been sitting at the 98% count
Yeah,
for the last 3 days.
Yes.
Because they're trying to now work through that last 2%
yeah.
to make sure that, all the i's are dotted, t's are crossed, everything right. Doing the return on those, and there's a couple other issues that I'm aware of that they're basically trying to just make sure everything's done, because there are a lot of go back and take a look.
There's some close.
There's a lot of close races
Yeah.
we usually don't have.
And
Yeah.
then a lot of that, there's automatic recounts too.
Right, but they gotta get within a certain percentage, and one vote is one vote, right, Stu?
Yes. When you sit through that, I got kicked off with one vote.
Yeah. One vote.
And it took us forever to get him to come back.
Yeah, he went fishing.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you
Sure?
went to Vancouver and went fishing.
I know.
I would have too. Beautiful.
And so centralized power on that last slide is just kind of, the council really has no authority as an individual. It's collectively as a body to make a decision.
That was one of the main things I took from the meeting with Lisa before I came on council, is she said that if you get on council, you need to understand that you have no power without everybody else.
Exactly.
And that's what I like. I don't like one person having all the power.
Nope.
So the next slide, city management generally. So here's where the council hires a professional manager that, gonna oversee the other employees, is gonna use progressive discipline. Is going to, counsel them, write up discipline, hire, terminate, fire, the whole thing throughout, the employment relationship. So there's staff oversight. Is supposed to implement policy and direct staff to implement policy and provide policy support. So when there's not, feedback, when there's something that's not going the way it should. And there's a quasi judicial, they've got to adhere to the charter, Oregon law, the municipal code.
So can you give like an example? I mean, this doesn't mean anything to me. I'm trying to understand it. Is there any example that you could give about that? Where that?
About the quasi judicial?
Uh-huh.
How about a planning decision?
Yeah.
Should have saved that one for
A
stump
planning
lawyers.
decision would be quasi judicial.
What would be? I'm sorry.
A planning decision, sometimes
Okay.
at the staff level, certain decisions can be made by the city manager. Or, unfortunately, I didn't pass that off to the city manager this last time, but I'm the floodplain administrator.
Okay. And the forester.
So I can do certain permits. It's a quasi judicial decision.
Okay, I
And
get it.
those can then be appealed if they're,
If he screws them up.
yeah, if I screw them up, or if the
Okay,
city manager
thank
screws
you.
them up.
That's upholding the rules.
So is it like somebody goes to the planning commission, wants a zone change and they say no? And they can come to us as an
To
appeal.
appeal it, yeah.
And that's what this quasi thing is.
I thought zoning changes, they just give us recommendations and we have to approve it.
I think that's.
Yeah, on zoning, yes.
On zoning it, and
I
then.
mean, if they go to one of the people and they say no, then they can come to
So
us.
if something, okay, so let's say, give you a perfect example. Bob Weiner, when he bought the land down there, was told that unbeknownst to an entire city council, was told that he could put in his asphalt plant. So when Bob Weiner went to the planning commission, the planning commission said no, it got referred to city council. And city council, because I mean, literally until we dealt with this, it wasn't a specific example within our code of industrial uses prohibited. Okay, but you're able to make that determination, and we agreed that no. And that's why we ended up losing $500,000 and
That was our quasi judicial decision.
he had been promised that he could do it, and they had evidence of it.
Yeah, as an outright.
Former city attorney.
Got it, okay.
I think didn't realize that you had to have a conditional use permit to be able to use that use in that zone.
That wasn't our contract attorney, was it?
No, oh, no,
No,
No, this is back for you.
this is, yeah.
way back. There's some huge litigation files in a
This
file
is-
cabinet in my
Yeah,
office.
that's part of the joys of why I got out of this job a while back.
That helps.
That's in the realm. If something happens behind the scenes, then it comes to the city council and we're for the quasis.
It's not quite going to court,
Yeah.
but it is court. That's why it's
Yeah.
quasi
Yeah.
judicial. It's kind of like court, but not.
It's kind of like judicial,
Legal.
quasi judicial, but it's not actually. I mean, it's a decision that applies just to an individual or an applicant. You know, not, legislative applies to everybody, quasi judicial applies to you as the applicant that
In
wants
that
to
one
put in
case.
that particular use on that particular
Local
property. And, and then appeals from the council go to the Land Use Board of Appeals. And then from there, I've been in 5 days of mediation at the Oregon Court of Appeals on a bunch of LUDA cases consolidated, and it's not fun.
So if somebody gets a traffic ticket, they can't come to us for it.
No, but that's why we have
Yeah.
municipal. court.
No, they wouldn't come to you, and just like the land use doesn't go to circuit court, all the land use bypasses.
So there's limits.
But if they got a ticket, no. Cause it's still municipal. Am I?
So what we did with the port, when they wanted to move and dredge and do all of that stuff, and the planning commission said they could, and then FEMA came back and said they couldn't, then it had to come to us for us to figure out what we were doing.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, we really weren't given a choice either.
no, we were not given a choice. But,
Again,
we still had to rule on it, basically.
Fun. John, can we talk about that four-letter word that starts with an F? It's FEMA.
Yeah.
I have actually gotten a 15-yard penalty for screaming that word.
Lisa, just got a question.
Yes.
Actually, one of the things that Mike hasn't mentioned with quasi judicial hearings is typically there are state laws that mandate how the public is involved.
Right.
Because, and you also, when you go into that kind of decision, you have to appear non-biased, and so everyone has to have the same information. So oftentimes, when you go into that kind of hearing, there is a structure. And you have to indicate whether you've had any ex parte contacts. So if, for instance, it was a planning commission recommendation that came to council and you attended a planning commission meeting to hear that information and no one else has, because you have to go on the same information, you have to make the declaration that you've had ex parte contact, or you've heard it on social media, or you read something about it in the
Or
news.
you've heard it from your husband.
Or you heard it
Yeah.
from your spouse, yes.
Actually, no, that doesn't happen, but
The only
Yeah.
time that
Yeah.
Wouldn't declare ex parte contact as if, for instance, you went to city attorney Adams or another member of staff.
Okay.
Yeah, my husband makes me show up to the planning commission meetings if I want to hear anything about him. And I make him do the same for city council. Just mean like that.
That's good for it. What rules apply to city council? You know, you have the authority given by the charter, the ordinance, and resolutions, there's, you know, again, doesn't rest with any single elected official, but with the majority of the body. The council acting as a whole. You have a question?
Objection to the wording.
I do have a question.
With the majority of the body means that there's those that don't agree with the body are separate. It should just be with the body, with the council. It shouldn't be majority of the body. I understand what you're saying legally,
I think
but
it's the quorum, it's the majority.
Yeah.
but by wording it that way, you separate those that aren't in agreement with the majority. Where they have to support. Anyway, there's been many times that we haven't all agreed. But it doesn't matter. If you don't agree,
Decision at the end of the day, yeah.
you still,
Yeah,
it passed,
yeah.
you agree. So you're
It's
not
still a decision of the
separate.
Council, whether you're
Right,
in the minority or not.
and you have to support it. You have to be positive. And
Yeah.
so to separate it out, so that's why I just said it's yeah. The wording automatically separates
The groups.
the group.
I get that.
You're trying to
If you
be.
say something shitty, you can say it's shitty.
Yeah.
I think though that you have to say, but I have to still respect the decision of the
Exactly.
council, even if I personally,
Exactly.
as an individual, did not, I think it's okay.
We
Say,
said
I
that.
didn't agree with that, I voted in opposition, but it passed, so we have to respect the decision of the council, that's the way it is. If you don't like it, you have to
Exactly.
change the entire council's perspective, but yeah, I agree with you, it's shitty. I mean, you can say that.
Case in point, when we had the psilocybin, Stu was the only one that didn't agree with it, but he still supports it as a council decision. He was the one that didn't. It's what people are supposed to do, as far as what we're talking about. We're supposed to support it as a council
And see,
decision.
that's what
I
I'm
use
saying.
that as an
That's
example,
separate.
not necessarily
More
that
like
he
what I
physically
really said,
supports
Dan
it.
out.
Yeah, but
The
the problem with voting no on something is the next part. Where if you want to bring it up for a reconsideration, you have to have voted yes for it.
What?
You got me confused there, Stu.
If you
Yeah.
pass, if you pass
the
something,
council rules. Is that what you're?
yeah.
So all
I
you
thought
gotta
I-
do is talk to somebody, one person and get them
Yeah.
to.
That's it. You have to get somebody.
That voted yes to do it?
But that's,
I don't know that anybody's gonna make that distinction. If you know, we do that as a school board. It's a 9-member school board. It's chaos. And I'm the vice chair, and if we didn't vote on something, somebody the next time said, hey, I'd like to put that on the agenda. You know, I'd like to rethink that, and is there a second? And I don't think anybody's gonna point out
But
that
according,
you making the motion is not the person that you voted against it.
according to rules, council rules.
I agree with the rules though.
Yeah, that I could not bring that up at a council meeting.
And
But it has to be somebody that voted for it to
Exactly.
reconsider it.
the perfect reason for that.
Yeah, so it
The
kind of sucks.
reason behind
no,
that,
it doesn't.
the
No,
reason
because that
behind,
way one person can't log jam
exactly.
everything that council does.
On our council, if we had
You could bring it up
just a
every week.
skinny majority that passed it, but then.
Sue, what you're talking about is one person. Okay, what I'm saying is that the 4-3s, you'll probably end up revisiting them anyway at some point.
Yep,
Okay, but 6-1s, if you allow the one person to continually keep bringing it up, then you're log jamming everything.
so you
That's-
gotta get somebody else
Bringing
to,
it up.
Yeah.
Well, but that's what's
Agree with
happening.
you.
That's why that rule's in there.
Yep.
There was more information that
I remember,
Yeah.
All you gotta
Howard
do is
doing
convince
that
one.
for about 3 months
Yep,
here at one point.
That's, yeah, and there. That's all.
and that's.
Yeah,
exactly
Howard
what's
was
in there.
quite amusing. We'll just put it that way.
I do have a question about the last one, the statements made to city attorney are not necessarily confidential. Didn't you just say that we could come to you about city and city client confidentiality?
Yes,
But that's not what that says.
it's probably a different way to communicate with me than it is with Mike, the city attorney.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know there was a distinction between the, or difference between the two.
Well, he's our attorney.
Right.
Yeah.
She's kind of his advisor.
everybody.
So going around Mike.
Anybody that has a question can call her and ask.
Yes, can.
So I have a question
Yes.
on this bullet point 3. Please explain that.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand it.
I do too.
Mhm.
Well, good. Explain it to me.
It means that just because, so somebody calls us and says, our driveway needs fixed. It's not our responsibility as a city council. That is still the responsibility of.
They screwed up and
Works.
charged my water bill twice.
Okay, now, I know that's
No. So
So-
we're thinking of 2 different things.
maybe,
You're looking at it as your city business.
I'm looking at it, I'm an
That's-
elected official for 3,600 people.
Right.
And if the city is doing something that is either detrimental or has a negative or, well, anyway, negative impact on possibly the majority of our citizens, who am I siding with? My opinion is I have to side with the 3,600, not the 46.
Yeah.
And then I think you put it on the agenda and the
Exactly.
council decides.
And that's how you bring it up.
To tell the city manager in the future to not have public works do X or.
Whatever that is, right? Because we're elected to be their voice. So that's why I was asking about that question. And yes, I understand what you're saying, Tracy. That's why some of us just do it out of our own pockets.
I understand.
See, that's another wording thing.
Yep.
And in that case, we're not doing it as a city official, we're doing it as a neighbor.
Yep.
And yeah, we can run into problems there when it comes to gifting and whatnot, so.
It's a whole other subject.
See, like the city employees, it's dumbed down. It's, because some of the city employees are our
Yeah,
employees,
yeah,
but not
that's
all.
true.
Not all.
Just the
Which
three of
ones?
us.
Which ones?
Me, the
3.
city manager and the.
Municipal court.
Municipal court judge.
Only 3.
By their
Yep,
charter.
only 3.
And the rest have other bosses, not us.
And the rest all work for the city manager.
Yep.
Who works for us.
What do you do
But that
then?
doesn't mean that they work for us.
What do you do though if an employee who, isn't one of those 3, you don't like how they're performing their job?
You talk to
You
their
go to
boss.
them directly?
Go
No,
to the city manager.
You go to,
their boss.
The
right,
city manager or the attorney.
right.
Well, and it would be best to bring it to council, your concern first.
No, not
No.
a specific employee, no.
No?
Employee is employee, personal,
There,
private. You have to go to their boss.
there's confidential personnel, it matters that.
So if you don't like what Ron's doing, you still got to go talk to the manager.
But city business. Does this exclude us from trying to find out information about an issue or something on there?
No.
I mean, it's
Like an example, Steve.
like if there was something going on in the city and we went to another city and asked them what they were doing, that's okay?
To another city?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay,
Doesn't mean they'll talk to you. I mean, depends on
yeah.
the issue, but yeah,
Okay.
you can ask that.
we can do that,
How do you guys handle that?
Yeah.
but we couldn't, if there was problem in the city as an elected official, we couldn't go to, like you were saying, the departments and try to ferret out our own
Correct.
I don't think you're gonna go to Pitcher and say, I don't like you sitting up by the port in your
Right.
police car.
We had,
That's-
we had a claim against a particular city councilor who really thought that one of the employees on staff was stealing. And so this particular city councilor took it upon himself to go to the employee's dad and start rummaging through it. Find evidence of theft. And so the capper of it was, he then went to the employee and said, give me your social media passwords, because I know you're talking about it. And so she said, no, I'm not. And she brought a claim against this individual. That was somebody acting outside the course and scope of his employment. When we talk about that in a little bit, that's really important, because even though he thought he was acting in the best interest of the city and doing something that was going to further the city's business, that was against the scope of like what he's actually delegated to do.
That's
And
right.
so,
Chief.
yeah,
I know,
and so that's the problem.
when I like sitting in on other meetings and such, but like when I sit out on the Toledo Planning Commission, just listen to see what they're
Sure.
doing. If they ask me something, a lot of times I can't talk about it
No,
because I'm a city official. And that's kind of what I tell them. But if I was a citizen, yeah, I could yak about it.
sure you can.
But-
Doesn't mean you have a,
But it,
yeah,
once you get that elected part, it kind of puts a screen on things.
it is.
So what's the ramifications if somebody's doing that?
Well, and you have to be careful not to speak as a council member, because then you're representing the whole council.
Yeah.
If you're speaking personally, you have to say, taking off my council person hat, I'm speaking as an individual, I'm not representing the council. You have to be really careful.
Well, how can you do that on some issues and such?
Well, yeah, you have to use your discretion and figure out when it's safe to do that and when not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, but I know there's penalties for doing that,
Mhm,
and that's why,
When in doubt, refer them to the city attorney.
mhm.
yeah.
It's,
I
I
don't
mean,
know if I should answer that. I think you need to call Mike.
Pass the button.
Yep.
Yeah,
yeah, I
Saves
know
you
it's
trouble.
difficult because you want to be helpful and you want to share information. The risk, though, to you doing that about something that is not within your authority means that you could be personally liable by the individual who's affected by that information you're disclosing.
no,
And so, yeah,
you,
personally.
Yeah.
And so here's a good example. I can think of one situation where there was a pretty bad actor at the city, and one city councilor wanted to share with the community what was going on with this individual and started talking about all the bad things this person had done.
Oh, boy.
That city councilor had no authority to do that because that employee did not report to the city council. This is not a supervisor, employee relationship, but that's another issue. And as a result, the bad actor who got fired later sued and said, you defamed me. Because that was not true, what you said, and this was not what the investigation revealed. And I mean, it was a mess, right? Well, again, that person did not have any business talking about this bad actor and got personally liable because at that point, there was a determination made. The elected official was not acting within the course and scope of their duties. So that's
Insurance coverage then.
that is correct. That is correct. And there's an obligation under Oregon law for a city, like in this case Toledo, to indemnify and defend the acts and omissions of their elected officials acting within the course and scope of their duties. I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but that's the key phrase, right?
Mhm.
And so even if you make a mistake, it's an omission, but it's within the course and scope of your duties, you're protected. And that's when insurance coverage comes in. That's when you don't have to worry then about paying a damage judgment or paying attorney fees because that's all covered. But if that determination is made that you did something outside your duties, all these rules that Mike was talking about, then you are on the hook for that.
Right. Step outside the guardrails, it can hurt.
I
Yeah,
won't.
I know you won't.
I know in
I'll try not
the
to.
past, that
Sure, if I can open my mouth, I keep it
older
closed.
times, I had a city councilor that would come in and just hold the court. about
Same here.
that.
yeah.
And they can't do that.
You can't do
And they
that.
shouldn't, and I don't know how you would stop that.
The other big issue is, and I see this in smaller cities, is when an employee's gone for a long time for a medical issue and they're on a medical leave of absence. And people in the community are like, where's employee so-and-so? Why aren't they at work? Are they on a paid vacation? What's going on? And so somebody's like, look, this guy is on a medical leave. He's got cancer. leave him alone, he deserves his privacy. Well, right there, you just
You're
said too
done.
much.
Too much.
Right? Even though you're trying to be helpful and in many ways trying to protect that individual because you don't want them to be viewed as like a slacker, but you've now said too much. And so it's really hard. I
So we've
understand. that.
actually had that here.
Mhm.
And what I always said was, you need to talk to him.
Yeah,
You need to talk to him.
that's right.
Because I knew I couldn't say what was going on, but you know, a lot of people knew him.
Yeah,
Straight to the horse.
Hadn't seen him.
Yeah.
And so
Go
you
talk
need
to
to
him.
talk to him,
right.
you know, get a hold of him on Messenger, whatever it takes, ask him.
Well,
Because
Yes.
yeah, that same thing, if somebody wants to know about that and we can't tell them, they could come to the city manager and maybe get a little more information.
Or,
We are.
Well, that's how you avoid
Or the city attorney.
problems.
Or you, and you may get, hey, it's personnel matter.
Yeah,
that's right.
You know,
There
you
may
know,
be
can't-
nothing to
can't-
share.
Maybe that's what I've been
Can't-
doing.
can't
is
share
I've been
anything.
saying that a lot. Tell you what
Oh,
it
yeah.
is. You have to go to the city
Correct.
to find out and they can tell you certain things, but
That certainly protects you more as a counselor than, hey, this time I'm gonna say this much and next time.
Yeah.
You know, I may make the cancer statement and say too much.
well, it's like what's going on with the social media stuff.
Yeah.
If we respond to that and we can't even say that's not true or whatever, is that right?
You shouldn't respond.
Shouldn't respond?
No.
You can type all you want, write whatever you want. Don't hit send.
Just delete afterwards.
Excellent advice.
That's what I do.
Excellent.
I'm on there all the time going. Delete.
Unfortunately, my delete button isn't on my phone.
My favorite
No. And so,
statement is that is a personnel matter. You should ask them directly.
yeah, so when that happens, if there was some kind of a legal thing that came up, we would be outside of being protected by insurance.
In every situation when we get a claim, we look at it based on the facts, right? So we're talking about some pretty broad generalizations here, but in that situation, if you decided, that's it, I can't keep people in the dark anymore, I'm gonna let the public know what's going on, that would be outside, most likely, the scope of your duties, because the council had not decided to reveal any information, and depending on who the employee is it somebody who reports to you or not? We would look at that. We would look at what was said. There's like a variety of different things we could look at, but all those things would factor into it. And then on top of that, you would have to worry about an individual claim from the person you were talking about. And that is a whole other situation. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
you gotta go.
I gotta go.
Okay, hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice.
This is all noted or video, right? I can go back and watch it all? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
um,
The school bus is already left.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
as far as our
state.
Something you wanna follow up? on?
Yeah, 'cause- yeah, well, on the last thing you were commenting on. One of the things that, not that it's happened here, but one of the things that concerns me is what's happening in St. Helens right now. Because everyone said the schools are new about the whole thing. I mean, I don't know, I look at that situation and I see nothing but liability issues everywhere I turn. At least in the way it's reported, so. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
What do you do when, say you're a lone counselor and you don't agree with the quote unquote decision when it involves something that explosive, let's put it that way.
Not sure I understand.
Okay, you know what's,
Sorry.
you know what's going on in St. Helens?
Yeah, and I don't know in St. Helens, are they saying that the school board knew that these
Yes.
this current and former teacher were
Yes.
fast engaging in
Yes,
this?
that's what came out today at noon.
Okay, and they did nothing about it.
And they didn't, yeah,
Okay.
the school, the superintendent and the school board president knew
Okay. So,
the last months about, especially about the guy who they finally arrested.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay, so in any situation like that, which in that case, it would be more like a negligence right?
Okay,
It's what you knew or should have known, and at what point did you know or should have known, and did you take any action at that point?
that's
And
what they're
so,
doing right now.
yeah, and I don't know the answer to that question over there, but
Okay, right.
what, generally speaking, what the law would look at is when it was brought to your attention or when you were kind of told something about it and you looked the other way, what was going on at that point? And looking back, then what could you have done to try to stop the harm from continuing?
So
And
would
so
our,
that's the issue.
so if something came to us
Yes,
along those lines, would our proper response then be get a hold of the city manager, bring in the police chief,
yep,
and have that discussion there?
then and there,
Okay,
then and there.
so for those of you that don't know, in the St. Helens School District, they just, a teacher just got arrested earlier this week, been under investigation and kept in school teaching for the last 4 to 5 weeks.
Not good.
Okay, and apparently, at least that's what came out at noon today, was that the school board president and the superintendent knew that he was under investigation for these allegations of child sex.
Proper touching and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
And so what did the city council have to do with the school board knowing?
No, what I'm saying is that in our case where we have, because I don't want us to ever think we've got to hide behind some quote shield of solidarity.
No,
If you have knowledge of something that is heinous, we have to act,
yes.
Yeah, that's clear.
okay? Because I'll be honest, I've been in town long enough. I've seen 2 or 3 different instances with city employees that had to end up going that route. Okay? What I always did was get a hold of the city manager, and then we brought in law enforcement and handled it. Now, it didn't come back to the city council until that employee was being dealt with. I didn't know if I was supposed to ever say anything until it came back to that. Was I doing the correct thing?
I think in this day and age of litigation, the moment you get wind of something that is, it doesn't sound right, it doesn't smell right, you think it's illegal, it is illegal, you
Something
need to
hinky.
act on it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a.
Well,
good
because that's
right.
what it sounds like happened up there for lack of a better, the school board members,
Yeah,
right? Is that they probably heard,
they must have.
right? But since nobody did anything, now they're all under extreme
That's-
scrutiny,
That's the problem.
right?
yeah.
Okay,
What you're saying, Mayor, is that, so you knew this and you went to the proper authorities, but then you can't say it to anybody else? Is that what you're saying?
and that's what I was asking about, is because
That
in
didn't
the
get answered, I
two
don't think.
instances that I had to talk to the city manager and then into law enforcement about it, I'm like going, I hope they hurry up and get this done, because I'm about ready to die hanging on to it.
So
Yeah,
that's
so that's in public meetings.
And Chief, I think you should talk about this, because when there's a criminal investigation underway, that needs to be kept under wraps
Right.
until
I
and
was gonna
when.
say,
And that's what I was,
That's okay
that's
to
what I was under.
look into it further. So when you have an employee who's under criminal investigation, you let the criminal part go first. Let that run its course, and then you do an internal
Right.
investigation, and then you can talk about how to deal with that.
Right.
Is that fair to
Well,
say?
Say so, but there are some instances that would need to elicit a public statement. That public statement would have to go through CIS to make sure that there's any liability issues addressed.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, obviously, if you ever had an officer involved shooting,
Yeah.
the public will want to know right away what's going on.
right,
Yeah.
That information needs to go through CIS to make sure we're vetted and being protected in anything we say.
Right.
And then presented. That's the only time I would say that any information needs to go beyond my investigative scope. So.
okay.
Now that brings me to a question. Stu, were you gonna ask something, say something?
Once an issue comes to the city councilors are not supposed to continue on their own investigations. And
Correct.
No, yeah, no,
That's correct.
so their
Right out.
participation in it shouldn't.
You hand it over.
Correct. You hand it over, you
Then
let it
we
go,
just sit back
you sit back.
and wait.
That's right.
Okay.
And waiting sucks.
And then you have fulfilled your responsibility. That's it.
Yes.
You
Okay.
know, that, and then you just keep quiet about it until somebody says you can talk about it. So.
Yep.
So,
Mike, oh, sorry, Tracy, go.
okay, I'll be quick. So they, you as a city councillor or a city staff or a city councillor, you're aware that an issue with somebody was, an employee or a staff member was brought to the city manager's attention and then he did nothing. Okay, so you're aware something's been addressed, been brought up, and then that city manager does nothing, then what are your responsibilities then?
As a city councillor, I would go to the city attorney.
Okay,
If you thought there was any potential of a criminal issue with the employee reporting to the city manager, I'd go to Chief Pace.
okay.
You don't sit on it, right? That is what your legal.
You gotta pass it to somebody.
That's where you're gonna get in trouble.
So Tracy, here in camera, you can tell me if I'm all wet. But let's say that you had something with Chief Pace, brought it to the city manager and nothing, crickets, right? Take it to Mike, it's still crickets. Then at that point, I'd say, well, I'd go talk to the DA.
Oh, boy.
Well, because
You know it's criminal.
if you know it's criminal and nothing is happening below where it should be happening, you need to take a next step up then at that point.
I can't imagine these guys ignoring it, but if they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I won't go into
Hypothetical,
20-some years.
hypothetical, so,
It's
obviously I can't imagine me taking
Yep.
anything to any of these individuals and not, I mean, my face might have to quit laughing at me long enough to adjust it, but and probably the same thing with either Mike, but, you know, they'd have to like, oh, are you serious? Oh, you're serious. Okay. And then we'd have that conversation and I have full confidence that they would address it, but
I'm
that's.
confident in our crew, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know,
You never know in the future, so that's why I asked the hypothetical question.
So I've reported. And then you guys are taking over, the city manager, the city attorney. How would I know that it's being handled? Or how would I know that it's not being handled? How would I know? I've
Ask a
already,
follow-up.
has to follow up later.
You,
Call them 3 days later and say,
You
hey,
can ask.
what's going on?
Yep.
Okay.
okay.
I know you can't share
Are you
with me
doing
what's
anything?
going on, but
What's
I
going
would
on?
like to know that this is being handled.
Okay.
Can you give me that assurance?
That's good coaching. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
The one last thing, let me just add this just really quickly. Employees here at the city of Toledo will not understand the role that you play with respect to their working environments. So it's not unusual to see employees go to members of the elected body and say, I have a complaint about my supervisor. And, you know, at that point, you say, thank you so much for bringing it to my attention. I need you to follow the city's complaint reporting procedure. So why don't you, go talk to Amanda and, see what she can do about it or somebody else. And then you send them on your way and then you write it down, what was told to you. And then you go to Amanda and you say, hey, this was just reported to me. I want to bring it to your
I
attention.
think actually I think our training is up that our employees do know not to come to us.
Good.
Unless they can't find another, I mean, I think.
Right, I was gonna say.
Yeah, cause I think
There
our
are
training-
exceptions to your comment. Because if they have already gone to Amanda
Okay.
and
Then you go-
there's crickets.
Yeah,
Then they come to me. I'm gonna take it to Mike
absolutely.
and to Amanda.
Absolutely. And you would tell that employee, if they said, Amanda's not helping me with this, and you'd be like, you should go talk to our city attorney.
Right.
But you don't need to, and you shouldn't be that employee's advocate,
Okay.
right? You are just a
Right.
piece of information that you can then pass on to Mike and
Okay.
a source of information for the employees so that you are helping them know where they can go.
Withhold the urge to be an investigator.
navigate this.
Yeah, just to navigate the system. and
I
make
was
sure
gonna
that it's
call Mike.
on track.
I don't know, come on. So my question, scope of duties or authority at the end of term, let's use Stu here, because he's quitting us. So I'm gonna pick on him.
Is what she said.
No, he just wants to go live 6 months a year in Canada.
And I don't blame him. They're both retired. They just sold the store. They're out of here. All they want. Anyway.
we know
I'm gonna
one of
use
them's
Stu
outta
as
here.
an example because it's perfect timing. It's the end of his term. And we have stuff going on. We've been in executive sessions and blah, blah, blah. Let's say Stu gets angry and blows his cork and spills his guts on everything. What are the repercussions?
Let's shoot him.
It's not gonna be retiring.
Public hanging.
I mean, he has no legal relationship with the city. The city has no legal authority over him. So at the end of the day, the city is kind of out of luck.
But he's still be sued by individuals though?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you can stop
And
the
he would
individual
not be
court.
covered by CIS.
No,
No,
because he's
because-
not acting within the scope of his duties.
Exactly. Yeah, he's exactly right.
Don't do it, Stu.
He's a personal.
But the ethics committee can still go after him, can't they?
Yeah.
Can the ethics?
It's my understanding that even though my term ends in January, come January 2nd, if I started spewing information that I knew, I'm still gonna get my ass in trouble.
Maybe. I mean,
Some of them might.
it would depend on what you were spewing,
You
who
know,
was harmed by it.
Yeah.
Those are lots of the different factors that would be looked at. So, yeah.
Just remember, you took an oath.
And the ethics
Well,
committee might get.
I understand that, but you know, I don't plan on that because I.
I was just using him as an example because it's perfect timing. He's gonna be in Canada. Who's
No,
he gonna talk to?
I'm going to Mexico.
Yeah, the other 6 months of the year.
I know if it's last.
Not getting very far.
Okay, as far as we're talking about knowing stuff about personnel and such, for what if it's another city councilor or, you know, we're going, oh, this is not good. Then we go to Mike or the city
Yeah.
manager again.
Mike,
Okay.
Yes.
Because I know in the past, like I was saying, there used to be a city councilor that would hold court here.
Yeah.
And do stuff that was.
Mhm.
And nothing really happened to him, but, you know, the ethics committee should have been on his ass right now.
Yeah.
That's 5,000 per event or just overall?
For coverage, you mean? Oh,
No,
coverage.
for what you can do.
Oh, so you can be fined. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 5,000.
5,000 offense.
Tough change.
Max or per offense?
Max per offense.
Yeah,
Per
okay.
offense, yeah, per
Yes.
offense, that's what it is.
Yes, per offense. So file your EIC,
And don't be offensive.
because that could be $5,000 if you don't.
Rarely offensive.
All right, moving on. Last
Yes.
couple of habits. Let's get through this so we can get through the social media. Just
Yeah.
constantly looking at your, you know, your council rules, your strategic plan, making sure everything still fits, making sure it fits your goals. You know, one of the worst things a elected body can do is pass a bunch of stuff and then never look at it again, right? So we want to make sure these things are always still relevant. And by doing that together, as opposed to just one of you on a, like a crusade, it's much more of then a council living document or living policy or whatnot, and that's the best thing.
Our recorder helps with that immensely.
Wonderful.
She runs a tight ship.
She keeps us,
Allocating time appropriately, whether it's just trying to be, you know, mindful of your time, mindful of the council's time, making sure things are on schedule, that always makes for a better operating group. But that's something you have to reach, an agreement on, like, we're gonna spend this amount of time on this issue and then move on, but that's a good way to operate. Following the council rules, yes. Anything in
Yeah.
particular there, Mike? Why'd you cite that one?
You know, just for the purpose of thinking about your authority. Think about the charter, think about the council rules. And that TMC 236-030 says the city manager is authorized to prepare rules and regulations for personnel to be administered by the city and time to time approved by the council.
Seeking objective assessments, you know, you guys get evaluated by getting reelected, by avoiding recalls, by hearing from people in the community. I mean, those are the things, that's how you get your feedback, right? So, but it's not bad. I mean, when you get that objective assessment or assessment from members of the community, you know, maybe you don't agree with everything you hear, but if there's something worthwhile sharing for the group, that's wonderful, right? And that's the whole thing. And that's why we recommend seeking objective assessments. And then, oh, sorry, Mike.
So I was just gonna say, keep doing training.
Keep doing training. That's right. Never stop learning. And two things I wanted to tell all of you about is that in a little over 2 weeks on December 3rd, LOC is having an elected essentials training in Newport.
We've been told we're going.
Excellent. I will see you all there then. But you will, I think, appreciate, because so many of these things we are talking about are going to be discussed in depth in that training. And we just did one on Tuesday, and it was great because it was nice for all the elected officials to chat with other elected officials from other parts of the area. And it's a really good training. Also on November 20th in Walport, there's going to be an LOC Small Cities meeting. If you haven't been to one of those, also really good to learn about what other cities are going through, what the legislative priorities are. There's all kinds of things you can learn from those. And Rod, I'm assuming you've been to all of those, right?
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
even leading a training at that, yeah, so.
There you go.
What's the date on the elected essentials?
Elected Essentials is on December 3rd. And you do have to register online, but it's free.
Yep.
They're
You
all
don't pay for
registered
it.
already.
That's when you,
And then the Walmart one is.
The Walport one is on November 20th, and that's.
I have a
also
line on
something you
it.
can Register for.
Yeah, Denise attended that. That's
You got it.
very.
I also, didn't, you know, I didn't know you, I'm cutting you off and
Yeah.
the LOC also has lots of webinars.
Yes.
And they have them at certain times, because they're great, and you have like a live person and ask questions and whatnot, and I've been doing some of those, and they're really good, they're really informative. I'm not sure I get all the right answers, because I actually was told one thing at the last one that I observed and then mentioned it, and we think that they gave us the wrong information, so, or that I was told wrong. It was actually not me that was told.
That's a good stump the attorney question. I
And
mean.
that's a
Okay.
good call LOC and ask.
Well, it was the LOC that
Yeah.
said
Yeah.
that, so, that was a confusing one to me, and I'm still confused about it, but I think Mike is looking into it, so.
On the education topic, on January 15th, we do have the Oregon Ethics Commission coming and providing on-site training at the fire department.
Here?
Yeah, it's gonna be an all-day thing.
On
It's
what
actually
day?
gonna be at the fire department, January 15th. I'll send you all,
What happens if
are
we
you
can't
gonna do
go?
the same thing?
there will be webinars available
Okay.
afterwards. We'll record it.
15th is all day what?
January 15th, that's a Wednesday.
That's right.
It'll be our
Elected
second meeting
officials,
of the
huh?
month, basically that same day.
All right, good.
So, and what time does that start that day?
Either 9 or 10.
In the morning?
Yeah.
See, I'm free on Wednesday.
So-
The mandatory one that we can be fined for if we don't do.
Now, what if I've already done that through an online webinar?
I'll follow up with you.
Okay, because I've already done that, or I think I've already done that webinar.
Keep learning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem doing it again, but
I'm just kidding. There are some mandatory trainings that the state's wanting us to go through.
Yeah.
But so 7 ways to improve communication during a conflict.
Study this.
You know, you can read it. Just watch your nonverbal and give others a chance to speak. You know, I think from the school board piece, don't get personal. I mean, don't say you're, you know, don't tag somebody with a, you know, don't become personal, start calling names.
why is he looking at us nice as that?
I wasn't looking at you.
We don't do it often.
So
No, we have a pickup later.
can you explain, apologize for your contribution?
To the conflict.
He was looking at me on that one.
Ah, okay.
Realize.
Add those words at the end, makes it a lot more sense.
Some of the words just too dumbed down.
Everything matters. And in Mike's defense, that is a slide that was came from my company, so.
That might
Not
not
Mike.
change.
That's right. Well, that was nice of you to say.
It's the CIS right there.
And I'm glad that stumped the attorney. I'm glad she was here for that, to answer that question. Debate versus dialogue.
Too old.
You know,
No, I'm too old because
Oh, next page.
when I learned debate in college, it was more of a blend of the two, not a strictly, my way or the highway versus let's work together. So I'm reading through some of these, go, yeah, that's debate. Well, that's not really debate.
It's got a
The
different
rules might have changed in debate now. I haven't been around it in 40 years, so.
Yeah.
be collaborative, assume that
Yeah.
information's gonna, additional information's gonna help craft the solution. You can redo that.
Yeah.
Don't, for lack of a better word, try to come together to make a solution,
Yes.
not just to beat the horse.
Right.
Yes.
Not to beat the horse that it's bad and we can have it. We have a. Maybe I shouldn't say this because we're an open meeting, but hypothetically, there's school board members in the past that, they just want to be right. And they just want to, that person, superintendent's wrong. And hypothetically, there's some attorney, school board member that slammed his hand down and said, Blake, you can't keep going after him personally in the middle of the meeting. And, you slam your hand down and everybody is quiet and, but sometimes when you've talked to my dad was a logger in the woods. Sometimes when you talk to the logger next to you and he is not listening, sometimes you just have to do that to get your point across. Social media, just be careful with the Insta, Google, tweet face. There's lots of
Say that again.
lots of legal pitfalls out
Insta
there.
Google tweet face.
I've said that to my kids. It's from a movie. I've said that to my kids for years. Public records law applies as far as retention and requests. So there's Oregon administrative rules that cover what needs to be retained, retention schedule, social media content is there as part of that.
If you write on it or doodle, it has to be saved for 7 years.
They do specify rules for communications, distributions, as well as complaints received by the city. Part of that, as we get into public records, social media, what's content that pertains to the conduct of the public's business. You need to, you have city operated accounts and non-city operated accounts and as you'll see as we get, I'm talking fast, but as we go through this, the next slide, the type, city's got a Facebook page, police department's got whatever page, and then you have the personal accounts and what you need to look at is to what extent are those private accounts subject to the law? And it really depends on how they're used. If you could go There's a couple examples, lawmakers Twitter account found to be a private account, protected from liability for First Amendment violation. The next case violated the rights of a county resident by banning the resident from her Facebook page. So when you've got private accounts that you're using and with our public accounts that Lisa's managing, she either needs to make it so nobody can comment on the posts that the city makes. Or if there's negative comments, there's First Amendment, and she can't be, blocking people because they say they,
So if somebody put on there, the city sucks.
Yeah.
Because we can't delete that.
Nope. Right. No, we've got an email and social media policy that has certain things listed that can be blocked. If it meets one of those requirements, but the city cops or Toledo cops, no. You can't block them.
But if you had it, that nobody could comment, then it would be.
You'd prevent it from happening.
It'd be protected.
Yeah.
One thing you have to remember is that the state of Oregon's First Amendment is much more far-reaching than the federal First Amendment. Okay, when it comes to freedom of speech, the Oregon Constitution defines it much more broadly than the federal case law does. So what you can think is that's surely got to be a violation, might not be under Oregon law.
So, public official agency accounts are subject to public record. A private account, if you're conducting government business on it, then it is. Much like your cell phone.
So can I ask for, can you back up? I see it says private accounts. The second one, it says the county commissioner, it says it's private up here. Violated the First Amendment rights of a county resident by banning the resident from her Facebook page. Obviously, it's not her private Facebook page, it's her public Facebook page, correct?
Well, or it's her
even
private
private.
Facebook page that she's doing.
If she has
Public business
discussed
on it.
anything public on
Okay.
that page.
So like my page,
Yeah.
most of it's missing animals, the goose that turnip missing, this,
Yeah.
But if I post on there, which I have in the past, thank you for reelecting me, blah, blah, blah.
Oh.
It now is a public account.
Yeah.
So if somebody said, well, I didn't elect you because you're dumb, I can't block that person or remove that post. Even though it's my personal account, because it's now public, because I posted something public.
Should have done.
She should have two separate accounts.
No posting.
And keep them.
So, yeah, I have an Instagram and I've never said it, it doesn't even say at the top that I'm a city councilor.
Exactly.
And it says nothing about my
It
affiliation.
doesn't either.
Mine doesn't. say
Except
anything.
I have thanked people, and I know that but that's why there's nothing on there.
Yeah.
But some of that's exactly what this is. Key takeaways, have a personal social media page, talk about your dog, restaurant reviews, not city
Keep it
issues.
personal, then.
And then if you want to have one that's,
Okay.
I have a clarification question.
yeah,
So if someone gets elected, and I'm gonna use Jackie's example.
Mhm.
She's a counselor elect, so if she starts talking about stuff before she takes that oath of office and actually sits on the seat.
It's still be private.
It's still a private account,
Correct.
correct? Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's until it comes,
until she.
but
Yeah.
yeah, that,
Well, I think
I didn't think of that, but.
best way to do that. I don't delete them. I just share gross memes until the trash takes itself out. My mother-in-law.
But see, that's all, it's, I can still use my, and
Sure.
I'm not gonna get in trouble if I don't delete
You
nothing.
better not to.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Key takeaways.
Well, you're talking about Facebook and social media things,
Yeah.
and you're also, is that in the realm of your emails?
And that's, keep all your city email
Yeah,
on.
all your city
on the
emails
city email
are
account.
coming into your personal account. If you're doing public business on your personal email, those should be archived. You should be sending those to Lisa.
So residents have a First Amendment right to email you and say, I think you suck and the way you run business in the city is terrible. They don't have a legal right to a response to that. So
We have
that's
somebody that does that pretty regularly for us, keeps us real and.
But if
Just don't
say
answer.
you don't answer a lot of your city email
that's.
accounts, then they send you, say, hey, Stu, you should be here. Does that make it just because the city sent you something?
Well, if it originated with the city, then it is a public communication. If it is a city provided
It's
email
accessible from the
address,
public.
then it is a public email account. There's no confidentiality attached to that. Those are all public communications.
Back in the day,
And they can
before
get
we
it from
had
the city.
city email,
Oh, yeah, that's
I
the,
mean, I brought my desktop computer in because it had to be gone through. It's like, here, have a nice day.
that's.
Yeah.
I got it back a week later and everybody said, oh, you're okay. I could have told you.
And the difference is if Lisa's sending you something on your personal email, Stu, you need to be at this public meeting. She's keeping track of it as a public record on
Right.
her end
Yeah.
because it originated from the city.
So you don't have to. keep it.
If you're doing public business as a city councilor with somebody else outside the city.
Send it to Lisa.
Right. So we have someone in town who we do quasi-official stuff with, who has never yet figured out, no matter how many times I've said, use this email account, not this email account, continues to send it to my personal one. So I've got an entire folder of just that person's stuff sitting in there. Because they can't seem to get the message, use this email, not the other.
That's just like
And you have to keep those.
I gotta
accounts.
keep them,
Keep them, and if you delete them, then you're in trouble.
then I'm in trouble.
I always check my city email on my phone. So if they ever want, they can take my phone.
Just one more thing on the social media I want to point out. I know that sometimes elected officials think that if they have a private social media page where they get to pick and choose who actually gets to see the posts on the social media page, that they are somehow above all this,
Mhm.
and that is not true. And that's why that comment about you have no privacy rights if you're conducting city business.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if you make it password protected, limited to invitation only, it is still very much a public official account, so.
And be careful what you do put on another so-called private account, as those of us that have lived here for more than 3 years should remember what happened to the former mayor of Newport.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's just,
Um,
and I shared almost all of those on my private one and it wasn't a problem for me, so whatever.
If you live here,
So, again, here's the acting within the scope of your employment or duties language. And, malfeasance in office. Doing something that you shouldn't be doing. Willful or want neglected duty actions outside the scope. So you really to define this, you look at the charter. You look at, ORS 221. 221.120 and 130. State statutes provide some guidance. On when you're acting in the scope of your duties. Case law, frankly, carries a lot. When you, next slide. You'll note there's no coverage for public records meeting violations. You can, and obviously the Oregon Government Ethics Commission recently started enforcing this and imposing fines personally. And so violation of public records meeting laws, you get a fine, it's you personally, it's not the city paying for it.
yep,
And again, acting outside the scope of personal responsibility. Let's move on to stump the lawyer.
Are we gonna win cash and prizes?
I don't know. 5-minute break.
Sure.
Yeah, we can take a break.
Is that okay? Just like, yeah, I just drank a lot.
Sorry. Yeah.
I'm just, I drank all my tea and I'm like.
Time's gone by.
So Lisa, got a question for you. So.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay, so
stump the attorney.
anything else you want to ask?
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
So at my most recent LOC training, it was about executive sessions, and they had said, one of the questions that came up is they told us in this training that had a requirement to not only keep record of our notes, but also keep a copy of the recording. The recording had to be retained, and I, like other people, are like, what, we're supposed to be recording the executive sessions? And they said, yes, there's a legal requirement to. And I'm like, okay. And of course, they're like, tell us if your city's not doing something. I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. I just wanna know if it's legal or not. And I wasn't the person that actually ended up asking the question. It was several people like, what do you mean you have to record it? Tell us, and they said, no, you have a legal requirement to do both. So of course, we come into executive session, I'm like, oh, we're supposed to be recording, like, no, you're not. So my question is there a legal requirement to record the executive sessions?
I thought when I looked at 192. Trying to think of the rest of
Yeah.
the citation, it's
Yeah.
either or.
I thought it was either
It's
or.
minutes or recording.
We've always taken minutes, right?
And my understanding of the law is they include the minutes as a recording, so.
Right, that's what
In
I-
the original sense, a recording was an audio recording.
Right.
But the intent is there has to be some form of a record. And so it could be in the form of of minutes, or it could be in the form of an audio.
Yeah, I agree.
The original recording was notes.
I think it's a best
school
practice.
districts.
Yeah,
And they just do minutes. They don't
Yeah.
do video and visual.
And there's a lot of cities that
They
don't.
just do
We
minutes.
just do minutes.
But they do have to do those.
some.
It was just it was scary, and it made me question that because it's like, we're not doing-
Glad you raised it, but that hasn't been my experience.
apparently it wasn't anybody's experience that was taking the class because we're all like. And they're like, oh yeah, you guys be doing something. We all.
Because we all jumped to, and when I say we all, I mean counselors, right? All jumped to the idea recording means audio or video.
Right.
It doesn't,
No.
in our brain, does not mean written record.
Right.
That's.
But she specifically, when we asked about it, when it was asked about specifically said there had to be written minutes and
Okay.
an audio recording.
We need to get that.
So that's what I'm saying, we need to get a, it was LOC that gave it to me, so my thought is, okay, call LOC and tell us, okay, can you give me where that's cited, where that's law, where that's coming from, cause that's my thought is to call them and ask that. But, I didn't want to be calling and saying, ooh, we're at City of Toledo, aren't you know? I mean, I didn't want to be doing that.
And ask it at the elected essentials training, because there's a whole session on public
Yep.
records. So. Yeah, interesting.
So did I stump?
No.
We've on consensus and we had Lisa in agreement. So.
So what's my husband supposed to do when he disagrees with me?
He's an idiot.
No, this is this one for City Attorney Mike Adams.
What's he supposed to do when he disagrees with you?
Yes, what is the appropriate thing for my husband to do when he, this is the stuff, they didn't say it had to be about this. Just see if we can stump the attorney.
I think it was a similar.
When he's unhappy with you, report you for an ethics violation.
Oh, that's perfect. No, I could do it. All right.
The planning
Anybody can
commission
bring
member is being
ethics
harassed by the
violation.
city council.
Anybody, I mean, it doesn't have to be some member of the city or council
And-
or whatever. It could-
Yeah, here's what you need to know about coverage for that. So we will provide $7,500 per person per year That's to cover your attorney fees, so you can hire somebody to represent you in that matter. And this is an ethics complaint filed with the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. There is a cap though on the city, every CIS member of $15,000. Which means that if this city council ever turned into like other city councils we have seen, where they start filing ethics complaints against each other in acts of retaliation, suddenly CIS says your coverage is capped and then the city has to take on the cost of covering fees and things like that for all those complaints. So please don't get in that kind of squabble. That would be really bad. So, yeah, okay.
More chaos than
So
Please, no.
this, I don't think this will stump you, but it's a question I had back in the day. What do you do if you find out that your city attorney is acting unethically?
You can reach out to the Oregon State Bar.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
That's what I did.
yeah.
Okay.
That's the,
Did you know?
that's the equivalent.
No,
No, it wasn't Mike. This
I
is
didn't-
long before Mike. This was
Man, that-
3, maybe 4 attorneys before Mike.
I mean, it's interesting, Rod, because as a government attorney, your city attorney is arguably covered under both sets of rules.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it might depend on the situation, like maybe it's more appropriate under one versus the other, but what you did was perfectly fine.
Okay.
So what is the city council's responsibility? Say we have a member of the council who is completely violating all of this stuff. Continually stepping out of their authority, they're creating problems, they're creating issues. What is our responsibility as a council? How do we handle that as a council? And
So-
do we handle that as a council?
Yeah, so your choice of response, using the word responsibility is interesting because I think at the end of the day, there is no legal responsibility. You know, as all of you as elected officials, your boss is the members of people who live in the city of Toledo and voted you here in the first place. The city council has no authority to remove any one of you from your
Right.
position. That is only something done by the voters through a recall or not getting reelected to office. What I have seen some city councils do in the case of, for example, a city councilor who was alleged to have sexually harassed an employee. What the city council did in that situation, viewing that they had a responsibility to the city and to the employee, they decided to take a vote to censure that elected official. And that's basically the city council saying, we don't approve of what you did and we are distancing ourselves from your conduct. All it is a public statement that you as an elected body could take a majority against another elected official.
Right.
That's really what it is. And like from a liability perspective, we like to see that as your defense attorneys because it shows, like I said, in that situation, you're trying to defend your employee so that you don't agree with or condone the actions of that one person.
But that doesn't affect that other
It-
city councilor. It doesn't,
No,
they
you're
still
right.
show up to meetings and everything.
Oh, yeah.
So-
They can still vote and all that.
Yes, and this is true, even if, let's say, you decided you wanted to hire an investigator to investigate the actions of one of you.
Correct.
You can't put that elected official on paid leave while the investigation is going on.
Especially since we're not paid.
Well, there's that, but you know, like you
Yeah.
think with employees who are doing something bad in the.
I mean, you could put me on paid leave, I'd be fine with that, but.
Place to ensure that the harm doesn't continue, right?
Right.
You can't do that with an elected official. You can hire an investigator to come in and investigate them, all right? But when you get that investigator's report back and it confirms everything you thought about that individual, what do you do with it? You can't discipline the other elected official.
I do censure.
You can censure. So you need to think about when those situations arise, like what is the end game with that?
Well, but, so let me throw a little twist on that.
Sure,
If the investigation comes back, and I'm gonna take your original example of sexual harassment.
yeah,
If it comes back that that city councilor via the way of sexual harassment created an hostile work environment and the city can be sued, can he be part of it?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, and in fact, that would be your defense strategy, which would be to distance the city's actions from the actions of this one person.
Okay.
It's gonna be tricky, but it can be done, you know, and oddly enough, if this harassment was occurring while this person was in office and in connection with his role, like in this one situation I can think of, the elected official was having, now this was a volunteer. This person was the chair of a volunteer committee, and they would get together after the meetings and go to his house to drink wine, and things got a little friendly, and she later changed her mind and didn't like it, told him to stop it. He wouldn't, so she complained. And so in that situation, the city felt that by having the report, by having the findings, they could distance themselves if and when this person ever brought a claim, and that would help them. And it never got to that point, so they never got to really test that theory, but I agree with what they did. I think that's the right way to look at it. It's just, it's a tricky situation when it's one of your own, right? Because there's very little oversight over you in this role.
So then if Mr. Dirtbag decides to run again,
Yeah,
then we as council members can't say anything about that?
well, it'd be interesting to see if you had permission from the person who was the victim to release information about it, written permission, you could come to an agreement with that person and say, here's what we want to state, or here's, you know, what you can state. First of all, you couldn't control what the victim wants to say, right? So they may choose to release that on their own.
Okay.
If you, as the body, really felt like you needed to take a stand and be public about this, and you would never do it without first consulting with the victim to see if they were okay with it. If the victim said, you know, I don't want you talking about this, then there's really nothing you can do, because you are supposed to, under Oregon law, respect the rights of the victim. And if, whether they want to make it public, great. You can't keep them from being silent, but if they want it to be quiet, they can make it quiet.
So with the censure then, so you run the investigation, you go with the censor.
Yeah.
Can you just, for lack of a better word, make a press release?
Yes.
The censor that you did.
Yes, and in fact, in the case that I'm thinking of, that's what the city attorney did. The city attorney reached out to the victim and said, this is what we want to do with the city council. And, you know, we won't use your name, but it's a small enough community, people are gonna know. And she was like, I don't care, you get that SOB out of there, you know, well, we can't do that, but this is what we can do. And so there was a lot of communication going on, and that's what they did.
Oh, one thing while we're talking about all this, I want to make sure that you all knew, Stu, you get off the hook in 6 weeks. We are all mandatory reporters for child molestation, all of that. So understand that if it comes to your attention, you need to bring it to the proper authorities. Okay, well, it's a new thing. It only came in a few years ago.
Yeah.
I'm used to it because I've been coaching, so I've been.
I am too, because I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to say the law only came into effect for public officials 4 years ago, I want to say. It wasn't that long ago. And it's something that I don't think gets talked about enough, is that if it comes to our attention, we have to report it. And even if it's vague, you report it.
Which again makes the school board's actions or lack thereof particularly troubling.
Yeah.
Well, it's heinous, is what it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Well, my question is, sometimes it could be two people that are involved, but then there's this third person that reports that. And is that still harassment?
It can be.
I've seen that done.
It can be, that's a little bit different situation. Because if it truly is a consensual relationship, then the employer's obligation at that point is to make sure it's well documented, that both parties know what their rights are, that if there's a change in the relationship, they need to inform the employer, and that in the meantime, one can't supervise the other. And they're gonna have to make a decision about that.
She's talking about relationships and.
Like consensual
Personal
relationships,
but
consensual.
we've also, I'm just asking about.
Yeah, if it's an elected official and a member of the community, you're not gonna get involved with that unless the complaint comes to your attention.
The third party would be somebody else in the community or something.
They can bring it up and you can say, okay, but they're adults, so.
Yeah.
this is not as-
I didn't vote for him.
This is not a city issue, so.
So in office type relationships, then you have to separate the individuals.
You worry about the power dynamic, and so like I talked about with the one situation, the elected official, the employee, elected official and a volunteer. Even though it's a volunteer, it's still a committee that reports to the council, and so there is that dynamic, so.
So that means I've got to quit sexually harassing my husband on the planning commission.
Yeah, well, that's probably a good idea.
Keep
You
it
could
behind
get a-
closed doors, Tracy. Keep it behind your closed doors.
Keep it in an executive session. For us, 192,650 is what I looked up before, council makes. The governing body of a public body shall provide for sound, video, or digital recording or taking of written minutes of all of its meetings. And then subsection 2 says minutes of executive session shall be kept in accordance with that subsection. However, instead of I skipped that sentence because it doesn't matter. Instead of written minutes, a record of any executive session may be kept in the form of sound or videotape or digital recording, which need not be transcribed unless otherwise provided by law. So executive session, you don't have to do minutes. You can just do the recording.
Didn't we go through that just a few years ago?
I think so.
On whether we were gonna record it or not, and we were like,
Best practice, you know.
I remember having. to
Really a
listen
full
to
recording of what was said versus somebody transcribing. So I'm wondering if they meant to say it as it's a best
I just
practice.
thought they said it was.
Well, that's not.
And I mean, the key word is neither, and so in that subsection, when neither a full transcript nor a full recording of the meeting is required except as provided by law. But the written minutes or recording must give a true reflection of the matters discussed at the meeting and views of the participants.
Okay.
So if you're taking notes that aren't really a true reflection of everything that's discussed, maybe you should keep a recording of an executive session.
and we aren't
Which is
supposed
probably
to,
what they're saying about best practices.
we aren't supposed to write anything down in executive
Well, but
session.
if we do,
And
we
you
have to
give it to Lisa.
Yeah, if we do,
If you write anything, you give it to Lisa.
yeah.
Anything else? On this training or anything, Jackie?
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay, okay. Tim, you good?
I think I'm good, yeah.
Okay, you too?
Yeah,
All right,
right?
we're adjourned.